Yeah, unmuting would be super helpful right about now.
Right.
Let me. Oh shit. Is that okay? No, that looks good. All right, sweet. Yeah, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the very tentatively named TO talks, or the state of majors. I don't really know what we're gonna end up calling this long term, but yeah. So this is kind of just wanted to talk about some more tournament organization related topics because I think the TO perspectives just kind of gets overlooked every once in a while. I've got joining me the one and only Cagt. I really appreciate you coming out. Just brief introduction. My name is Noah. My tag is Wrexcalibur. You guys can kind of call me whichever, but I'm a tournament organizer from Huntsville, Alabama. I've done some. Largest event I've done is called Home Sweet Home. It had 160 people about a month ago. It was everything ran well. Had a lot of the southeast roll up, and I've also volunteered a lot for events like DreamHack. Going to be going to CEO this year. Also done some volunteer work at SmashCon, so on and so forth. And yeah, just really open to keep growing as a TO. And joined by Cagt. If you want to introduce yourself real quick.
So what's up? I'm Cagt. My name is Cyrus, and I'm an esports consultant, mainly active in the Smash scene. I've done a lot of events over the years, most notably the Smash World Tour recently, over the pandemic, and I've also been involved with plenty of majors such as, I've been involved with CEO, I've been involved with SmashCon, I've been involved with Riptide, not at like a super high level, but just TOing there, and just usually in some way, shape, or form involved with the general national scene as a whole. I've also made the online calendars for both Ultimate and Melee. I made the global band database, as well as a bunch of other guys. So I'm pretty active in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, and yeah, like I said, just really appreciate you joining me for this talk. I think it's a pretty broad and big one, but going to be talking about for all the people in chat. We're going to be talking about the state of majors, or mostly looking at there's a funny little thing called COVID happened during 2020 2021, where we were quarantined for a year and a half, and events effectively completely came to a halt. And so
Yeah.
looking at events pre to post COVID from the early 2020 era to around now in mid to late 2021, what's changed in between majors and events from across that era? Because we're talking about stuff that's not just not even actually COVID guidelines, because COVID guidelines, sure, masks are starting to be worn and we have to social distance and stuff like that. Like, sure, that is a change that's happened, but there's a lot of other effects that have happened because of COVID that I don't think a lot of people would really account for unless you sit down and think about it. And so what actually inspired this topic was I was on a flight home from Riptide. I pool captained like probably far too many pools. I think I did like 8. um,
Jeez.
it was a really bad decision.
You went insane, dude.
Dude, 8 days, 8 hours both days. It was a questionable decision. My feet were very, very pissed at me.
I can imagine. I hope you got lots of sleep like after that
Dude,
weekend.
but all of my roommates were trying to play Smash until 1 or 2 in the morning. I was like, you guys are assholes. I want to go to bed, and so do my
Right,
feet.
like I don't want to think about Smash right now. I just want to sleep. Like,
No. No, but it was still good. It was still a really really fun experience. Really enjoyed it. But one thing I noticed as I was doing all this pole captaining stuff was the sheer amount of disqualifications I was dishing out, and it felt, even from my previous experiences, it felt like a pretty absurd amount. And so
yeah.
I postulated a lot about like why that was on the flight home. I actually talked with Contra a little bit, who was on staff at the event. And even setting aside the postulation for a little bit, I actually recently went through and looked at COVID data, or looked at disqualification data for events, comparing pre to post COVID numbers. And I'll actually put up this little visual aid on the screen for us that I made. And so looking at this, you have, let's look at Frostbite, 5% of your attendees DQs. Like, when you look at the number of DQs actually pre-COVID, they're not egregious. And even when you look at the number of DQs post-COVID, it doesn't seem like a huge number. But then you take that
Right.
into the context of the amount of attendees you have. And
Yeah.
5%, 9%, 7%, 7%, 9%, and then compare that to, holy shit, we are consistently getting double digit percentages of
Yeah.
DQs pre to post COVID, which is fucking insane. And it's not just the DQs, it's also the amount of refunds and the entrant caps that are hitting as well. And I'm sure you could kind of speak on that a little bit with InfinityCon.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just like Infinity Con obviously was like the first like major back, right? And I think the big reason why there's such like a big jump in like DQs, there's a couple of reasons honestly.
Yeah.
The first one is obviously majors are back. There's that whole major rush, right? Like we haven't had offline Smash in a year and a half. Everyone wants to jump on board. Everyone wants to be the first to like attend these majors and compete. And there's also, unfortunately, because of COVID and because of this like big rush, events were forced to basically cap their events at like a much like not at necessarily like a lower number per se, but they couldn't just like go all out. Like they had to stick to venue limitations. They had to stick to certain rules that made it like we can't have more than 700, 800,000 people in the venue. So everyone's like, I need to register ASAP, otherwise I'm not gonna get a spot.
Yep.
Problem is, um, Smashers aren't the best with like planning their trips, and that was the case pre-COVID, obviously, but it was in a much smaller scale. Now, when everyone rushes to register, doesn't actually plan out anything, and then when comes the weekend of, it's like, oh shit, I have to go to Riptide. I haven't planned anything. My trip costs $800. I can't go. Well, all right, sorry guys, I'm not going to Riptide.
Whoopsies, yeah.
Whoopsies. Oh my bad.
Well,
And so you'll have a situation where like they'll get like a bunch of like refund requests and then get a bunch of DQs and then this is what happens.
exactly, yeah, and I think you basically hit the nail on the head where there's a lot of people that are, prior to COVID, you would, all right, I know when this event is happening, let me call off work, let me go ahead and book the hotel, let me get my registration up. Registration is the last thing. However, now with these entrant caps that are being introduced, everyone's all of a sudden rushing to make sure that they get a spot at these events and not getting the time off of work. They're not getting hotels set up. They're not finding out if their friends are going. They're just all rushing into this because if they don't, there's a chance they end up just not getting a spot at the event, which fucking sucks. Like,
Yeah.
the cautious ones are the ones that are getting screwed here because they can't actually go to the event anymore with all these people rushing the caps. And then if you follow that up with, it's like, okay, so, I didn't call off work or I ended up not getting work off, that like work wouldn't let me off. Well, shit, I can't go. And then it's on the attendee to actually tell the organizer, hey, I can no longer go. So I need a refund and also this spot opens up, which is like, it's all, at that point, it's the morality of the attendee.
No, exactly. Like a bunch of attendees, like, they'll either like they won't tell the organizer at all that they're not coming. It's just like, oh, I forgot. It just doesn't come to mind. You'll have people that are trying to like sell their spots. You have people that are trying to get like like there's so many factors at play. And you just end up in this situation where you can't possibly control every single DQ, every single no-show. And like that's okay. Like you're gonna have no-shows, that's okay. But when it goes to such a scale, what can you do about it, really? I mean, I guess unless you like harass, Twitter and you harass your attendees all the time, like, hey, make sure to let us know, make sure to let us know. Like, you can do that, but it's just a lot of extra steps you have to take to at least maintain that sense of like, fairness across the board for people who want to go and who didn't have the money or, blah, blah, blah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, whenever I was first postulating like the idea of like, oh man, we've got all these attendees missing, but I originally asked myself, is this really a problem? That was the first question that came to mind, and because while I was running the bracket, it was annoying because I had setup dead time, because I had so many DQs, I couldn't actively call any matches to go. But then the 15-minute or 10-minute or whatever the fuck major wants to do it, the DQ timer hits, I run through all of those, and suddenly my bracket's a lot shorter, and that's not as big from a bracket runner's perspective, it's not that big of an issue. And then if you look at it from a top-level TO position, the money is still in their hands. It's not like they're necessarily getting screwed out of the money if someone's a no-show.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Wait, at first you're like, where is the issue? But then
Mhm.
you think about the fact that there are all of these other people out in the world. Like, hold on, let me look back at the percentages. Because let's say that Smash Ultimate and Riptide did hit their cap.
Yeah.
138 people are disqualifications. That's 138 people that could have gone to the event and had a great time at the event.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
instead, people are just not showing up. And sure, some of those DQs are the classics, like I overslept or I got hungover or I wasn't
Yeah.
feeling like competing that day. But
Right.
still, there's it's like it's inconsiderate to those that would want to go, and that's not an effect that the average smasher is going to see really.
Right. And it's like you again, we just can't control everything, and I don't know. And like someone's gonna, someone's all this. People always also make that argument of like, oh, let's say you hit the cap, like, oh, what's one more person gonna do to your cap? Like you're not gonna shut down the event because like, oh, you had 770 people instead of 769. It's like, sure, one person is not an issue. But if you keep using that one person excuse for like 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 50 people,
Mm-hmm.
it quickly adds up. And there's always that like, oh, can I bring my friend? Can I bring my carpool? Blah, blah, blah. It quickly like, explodes, and it quickly like multiplies. And you at some point you have to play that role of the strict TO of like, look, we have a cap, we have rules, we have guidelines. Either you stick to those rules and you kind of play by the book, or you just, you're a no-show, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that just a little bit of leeway can compound so quickly, and like TOs
Right.
just have to hit the deadline and say no, we can't do this
Mhm.
anymore. This
Yeah.
isn't feasible.
Right.
And I know kind of tangentially related to this. We've talked a lot about issuing refunds, and I'm sure
Mhm.
that Riptide had its full share. Like Josh had to deal with a lot of that. I'm sure you're
Yep.
gonna have to deal, or you had to deal with a lot for Infinity Con. Like I
Yep.
can't imagine. And then also, if you're in the CEO Discord right now, Jabali is still getting well after the point where he's
Hmm.
made tweets, where he's sent out emails. He's still getting an absolutely absurd amount of requests for refunds. And I think he said like I've put in 300 hours of work into processing refunds, into
Right.
getting those new registrations live.
Mhm.
It's like that shouldn't be something that a TO has to do. Like, or
Yeah, I
it's so it's
it's yeah, it shouldn't go to that extent, like you said.
mm-hmm,
Like, I think some events and some tiers are kind of realizing that you have to start adopting like the no refund policy, like right off the bat. Like
mm-hmm,
I've always believed that like, once you register for an event, once you put in that money is locked in, and we can't, refund you
mm-hmm,
for the simple fact that like, these events obviously cost a lot of money. And let's say you've got like 1,000 people going to registered for your event, right? And let's say, in a few weeks leading up to the event, you get like 100 cancels, for example,
yeah,
right? Sure, those 100 people want their money back and they can't attend the event, but at the same time, you got bills like you got a
mm-hmm,
venue to pay, you got a stream to pay, you got lots of shit to pay.
yeah,
I understand obviously getting your money back when you're not getting the product or service you're getting,
mm-hmm,
but we also have to whenever we see like X amount of registers, we're preparing the event for that scale, assuming every single person shows up.
mm-hmm,
So if last second or within X time some people don't show up, and we have to like adjust things, we can't go back and contact every single provider and every single thing, be like, yo, like, scale it back and do this and do that. Like, we just have to go with what we planned,
mm-hmm,
and we can't exactly like, I can't go to like my production team like, hey, can you send me back like $300 because like 4 players said they're not coming. I
yeah,
can't do that,
mm-hmm,
Um, it's just and I understand, not everyone likes committing up front to like for a major. Not everyone likes kind of saying like, oh, I'll lock in my spot for like 80, 90, $100.
mm-hmm,
But I think that just comes with the territory. Just how that comes with like event planning, and also just like if you want to support your TOs and your events, just say like, look, I'm gonna make a conscious effort to show up to the event. I'm gonna register in advance, and if something comes up and you can't make it, it's unfortunate, but just
yeah.
at
You
least be considerate.
No, absolutely. And I think kind of another point as to like another why this is happening kind of thing is, and I was kind of originally going to kind of touch on this point a little bit later, but I think it's a lot more relevant now. Is when COVID, ended, when quarantine effectively lifted, and we started to try and resume national level stuff, there were a ton of events that all got announced at around the same time. So
Yes.
trying to think, Riptide, Low Tide City, Let's Make Big Moves, SmashCon Fall Fest. God, what else? What else was there?
Main stage got announced.
Main stage.
Genesis a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Like every major that's like coming up or has happened in like a 6 months time span, I think were all announced within like the same month or something. It was like it almost felt like every other day there was like a new major that was announced and people were shelling out hundreds of
Hundreds of
dollars.
dollars.
It
Yeah.
was an absolute like insane like week of just like you literally had to be online like 24/7
Mm-hmm.
watching every single stream and every tournament being like, you know, what event is going to be is going to be announced next and it's dude, it's insane. Like
Yeah.
I
It was
I
no,
mean like yeah, yeah.
no, it was definitely absurd. It was just back to back events, and all of these events were the registration was were live, but none of them actually happened until Riptide really was the I think the first one that really began this sequence of events that all started their registration. And but I think a lot of the stream or the major monsters that really love the to travel or really liked they were like, yes, after once COVID ends, I am going to travel so much for this game and relish in
Hmm.
the offline. And then they went to
Right.
Riptide and then they bustered out or they
Yep.
didn't go
Hmm.
like things just didn't go as planned. They're like, damn, this is a lot of money to spend. I
Yeah.
don't want to go to Let's Make Big Moves or
Yep.
CEO and all this other
Yep.
things, and like the reality just like fucking smacked them in the face and like, oh shit, I don't want to go to all this. I'm gonna pull out, or I'm not gonna tell them that I'm gonna pull out of the event.
Right, exactly. I'm just gonna like decide like, oh no, I'm gonna sit this one out. Like even if you do say, hey, I'm gonna go to every major, right? And you compete at like two of them, you're like, oh, I'm burnt out, I need a break, I need to chill for a bit. I'm gonna skip out on the next major. That's what Sparrow was doing. He had
Mm-hmm.
an incredible run at Port Priority and main stage, and he's like, look, guys, like I'm really burnt out. I can't do this. Like I need to focus on myself for a bit. I'm gonna skip out on CEO. All of a sudden, Spargo's not going to CEO, and that's a big deal.
Yep.
So that can happen to literally anyone.
Of any skill level, yeah,
Yeah.
it's absurd, and it's like, and I don't think people really get. We forgot that. I think our bodies, frankly, forgot that. I know that running my weeklies and hell, even doing Riptide, my tournament stamina has gone completely out the fucking window, and I can only imagine it's the same way for a lot of competitors too.
Hmm. Right.
But so kind of now we talked about a lot of like the causes of these DQs and all these the how attendees are treating major signups
Hmm.
now. I think now the question is, what do we do about it? Like, is there anything that the TOs can really be doing, or is this something that the attendees that it's just is this just going to be something that kind of shakes out over time? Like, are we just going to have to keep running majors until this let's rush and hurry and go in sign up for majors as soon as possible? Do we just have to wait out that mentality, or is there stuff that TOs actively have to need to be doing to stop this?
I think it's definitely gonna calm down. I think now that we've kind of gone past this initial rush of majors, I think it's definitely gonna go back to how it used to be, where it's like a little bit more mellow, a little bit more like, all right, it's more reasonable. But I think TOs still need to do their due diligence of like reminding people like, hey, if you're not coming, please make sure to like contact us. Maybe have like a specific form or something you can just fill out whenever, and then you periodically go through that form and like issue refunds.
Mm-hmm.
Something that, for example, something we're doing for Let's Play Big Moves is we allow transfers of registration. So, like, let's say, events been like LMBM's been capped since reveal, right?
Yep.
It's been like a couple of months now,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have especially the room, the budget, etc., to like expand. So what we say is like, all right, well, if you can't make it, but like a friend or something who does want to go and can make it, fill out this form or contact us, and we'll do like a registration swap. That way we still get, your friend doesn't need to like, shell out anything more for registration. you don't need to go through the hassle of like refunds and everything. You can still feel like there's a value that was given to the event. And then the organizers can say like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about losing hundreds of potentially thousands of dollars because I don't have these attendees. I can just say, all right, we'll just swap it out for someone else. And I think that's a good solution to like this problem. Is like, all right, just let me know who you want to give registration to. So
It's definitely a good starting point because this way the TOs aren't having to like shuffle money in and out of their PayPal. It's like, okay,
yeah.
the attendee buys in, we have to refund. They have to refund out of the account or whatever, and then next attendee, the spot opens up. Next attendee comes in. Do we have to dish out the refund for this person whenever they flake?
Yeah.
And it definitely ends that cycle, and I imagine it would take a lot of stress off of the organizers and the time that they'd have to invest. No, that's actually really good, and I think you also hit on it earlier when you talked about no refund policies. Is
Yeah.
like that. I think that's going to help solve a lot of issues and really make people hopefully make Smashers step back and be like, hey, I don't really need to enter this event yet.
Yeah, like I don't need to like make the decision like right now. Like for example, for Rise and Grind, right? Like
Yep.
the event's like 10 months out, so you got plenty of
So
time.
much time.
And we made sure to like put that in like really like red bright letters, like all passes are non-refundable.
Yep.
So and also when you're going through registration at the very end, you get like a little checkbox like again, I attest that like this is a non-refundable pass and that, once you register. That's it. There's nothing else. Like,
Yeah, definitely. I also wonder if there's any solutions that need to be had for the bracket runners, for necessarily like pool captains, because pool captains don't exactly have a good way of being in contact, because a lot of those guys are just volunteers that
right,
they attend their meeting and then they show up the next day, they run their pools, and then they're done. Is there
right.
is there any impact or solution that needs to be had for all these no-shows that are happening for these people? Like, is there a process that needs to happen at check-in that says, hey, these people haven't even checked in or gotten their badge for the event, let's let the bracket runner in some way, shape, or form know this, so
No,
that way they
right.
can get that DQ go ahead and gone so their pool can run faster. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if
feel like this.
that's really difficult, but
Mhm.
I don't know.
I feel like maybe like that means you'd have to do some sort of coordination between the check-in staff and the TO's like day of and be like, hey, like let's say like for 10 a.m. pools, these guys haven't shown up. They need to be queued. Like I don't know that. Then maybe there is a system that we could look into that could like create that and like could make it easier. But like I don't know.
It's rough.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
I like it. There's no real goods. There's no good solution at the very least.
Mhm.
And I just had one more point that I kind of want to bring up before we shift topics. Because I don't want to belabor the DQ thing ad nauseum,
Right.
but
Right.
it's not just from the organizing perspective. Like, sure, there's the issue comes in from the refunds, but I think this is also hurting the players, not just in they can't sign up, but some of their pools aren't very competitive, frankly.
Yeah.
I think that there was a pool at SmashCon or something like that where a guy lost round one of winners and then made it out of his pool loser's side, winning a single match, which is
Yeah.
like absolutely absurd. And then on the other side of that, some people get to winners finals of their pool not having any warm up whatsoever, and then having to play the top player of their pool with no warm up, which is a huge problem for some of these people. There's no
Yeah.
ramp into the difficulty of their bracket. It's just you were facing the most insurmountable part of your bracket more than likely right now.
Oh yeah, no, I even saw like one player who legit made it out winner's side without playing a single match. Like he got extremely lucky. It was just like DQ, DQ, DQ. Hey, look, I made it out of pools, and I'm just like, I'm like, like it might like, you'll laugh about it for like 5 seconds, right? But then I'm like, dude, like I didn't get my money's worth. Like it doesn't
No,
like
yeah.
I've had situations happen where like I like make it like further than and then a certain point because of the cues.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, it doesn't feel good as a player. It does not feel good. Like Sure, you get to make that tweet that's like, oh, I made out of pools at majors, or like,
Ha
oh,
ha
I got
ha.
like, I got ninth out of like whatever on my local, but it's like, dude, I didn't beat anyone. I
No.
feel like shit. I'm like, I didn't learn anything. I didn't prove like, I'm like, so I know like some people get like really happy when they're like, oh yeah, I get DQs. Like, we take those, but like,
Yeah.
I'll take like one
One
DQ, not
DQ.
like, not like four of them. Like, I'm like, all right, what the hell,
Yeah, no, that's rough, and so I think there's something to be said that, and it's luck of the draw who gets that, because there are going to be some pools that have zero DQs and is like the hardest grind fest of your life, the sweatiest matches you play in your fucking
Yes.
life, and then there's
Yep.
others that are completely set that it's a absolute breeze. And I think I think that hurts the player experience so much at some of these majors, especially if you only get to travel to a major once or twice a year.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like it's your one time to shine,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you have like the unfortunate luck of having like a scuffed bracket or something, it's like it can really sour someone's experience,
Yeah.
especially if they don't understand or know everything that happens in a major. So
Mm-hmm.
I totally get it. I
No,
totally get
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's one of those things where like even a TO can do everything perfectly, but if it only takes one part of an event to go wrong to sour an attendee's experience, and that's just how it
Yeah.
is, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But anyway, so kind of shift topics. If you want to pick up with the next kind of the next big change that's happened really in the past couple months.
Yeah, for sure. So, something else I think that's I've noticed that's been a topic, especially with main stage and Riptide, is scheduling. It's the way events are scheduled and the way they kind of lay out how the like what times you play your matches and such.
Sure.
And so, for reference, let me see if I can bring up the main stage
Sure.
schedule. I've got the image right here. Let me send that to you.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me
There you
I'll see
go.
if I can do a thing to pull it up in chat. Thank you.
And then Riptide, I think.
Whoopsies.
And yeah, I think I'll just stick with the main
The main
stage
stage
schedule
ropes.
'cause
Yeah, sounds good.
it's the same one as Riptide. Yeah. Let me know once you got it shown on stream.
Shit. I'm trying to think how to do this. Hold on. I think let me. Fuck. Okay. Hold on.
You're good. You're good.
Visual aid. I've got pictures. Where's main stage? There it is. Here we are. All right, cool. All right. Oh, this is a very big image. Jesus Christ. Hold on. I need to shrink this down a little bit.
Oh yeah, they went with like a 4K.
Yeah,
Like
it was the ultra HD. I can see every pixel of 4 a.m. kind of deal.
right,
All
exactly. I mean,
right.
like I appreciate it. It's like nice and clear, but like, all right,
Yeah.
look,
All right, there we go. I'm just gonna put it smack dab over our faces for a little bit.
all right,
But
that's
yeah,
totally
so I've
totally
got
fine.
the event schedule pulled up though.
Okay. So, as you can see, so a very big topic of debate over main stage is that you play for an absurdly long amount of time on Saturdays. You can see 10 a.m. pools right off the bat, and then you play top 64 at 6 p.m.
Ooh.
until 10 p.m., and then you gotta be back up, ready to go 10 a.m. on the dot for top 16 of the bracket on Sunday. So it doesn't really leave you a lot of time to kind of like relax and sleep and such.
Yeah.
And looking at the bracket format for main stage, that's another topic we can go into where
Hmm.
it's like it's pools into top 128, into top 64, into top 16.
Yep.
So you're doing three phases of bracket in one day from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yep.
That's a
That's a
lot.
fuck
That is
ton.
that is a lot of ultimate. And
Yeah.
like keep in mind, like I believe main stage was top 16 best of five, if I'm not crazy. No, it
Uh,
is top 64 best of five.
Jesus Christ.
So
Oh
okay, so
no.
so imagine you are Debuzz, and this is obviously all the love to Debuzz. So you
Yeah.
are Debuzz. You wake up 8 a.m. nice and early. You play your matches. Okay, let's say 10 a.m. You got your pool. Get that done in like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're finished at 11 a.m. You get to like small break for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Come back at let's say I don't know, let's say 2 p.m., right?
Mm-hmm.
2 p.m., play your top 128 match. That's like another hour. Let's say an hour and a half because stream. So let's say you finish at like 3:30, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Another small break, and then come back at 6 p.m. for your top 64 match, which, you and I both know that's like prime content time. So
Yep.
it's like it's all best of five. It's all like there's a waiting time, and that takes, let's say it went like really slowly, like all game fives. That takes like 2.5 hours. You're done at 8:30. That's 12 hours of your day that you spent either playing or waiting for a match or waiting for a fade or something. That is physically and mentally exhausting. And to
Jesus.
go from like best of three to best of five again while escalating the skill level, and if you're doing any side events, if you're like doing like meeting fans, like
Mm-hmm.
so many, like just being at a major, that takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
And so obviously, burnouts happen, people get upset, people don't play well, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Frustration tweets happen, and then here we are.
And here we are. Yeah. Yeah. No.
So yeah. So what, I don't know. I kind of just give like a quick explanation to the public. What are your thoughts on the general scheduling debate that's been happening recently?
So because I saw this at Riptide, from a TO perspective, this is extraordinarily efficient, which is cool and all because yeah, you have effectively run a major from front to end in one day is what this is what you're basically saying with a structure like this.
Yes.
And in theory, that's all well and good, but player experience, like I think that hopefully I speak for all TOs when we do this for players. We do this such that player experience is the priority. We want our players to have the best time at our events, and we want them to grow and succeed from it. But so when I look at this and I'm like, damn, I think I looked at Riptide and I was like, I looked up the stage and I was like, huh, Fatality is still playing. He has been playing in losers for, I swear to God, 10 hours straight. This is insane. And like, I can't imagine how soul sucking this must be because, don't get me wrong. I think there's something to be said about icing out your players. I think that icing out your players is one of the most disrespectful things you can do. I think there's also something to be said for giving them bracket time to prepare for their next pool. Mm-hmm. But when you go through that phase of wait an hour, play, and go shifting that, I imagine, I cannot speak because I'm not a top player, but I imagine that is one of the most, that is going off and on from that. That mentality is extraordinarily draining. I cannot imagine doing that.
Yeah, and it's funny, because like on the surface, right, like basic surface level, you might think like, well, why would a player complain about playing more? Don't you want to get as many matches as you can out in a day? And like you said, from a tournament organizer perspective, it looks very good because you're like, well, you're so good at your job, you can get 800 people out the door in a day. Why not do that every time? It's like, well, one, on the TO side, that's a very difficult task to do consistently. And on the player side, it's like you get burnt out and there's this sense of like rush where like you have to play all your matches, you have to do like XYZ, and it just, like you said, the player experience is diminished and it just makes it just doesn't make it as worth it and as fun as you would originally anticipate it to be. And I think there's something to be said about like just like you want to pace out your brackets at locals and majors, you want to pace out the experience of the players outside of bracket as well, like pace out the different events and different activities they are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cadence and tempo of a bracket is so unbelievably important. Now, particularly at a local level, because that's what I have the most experience with, but especially looking at a schedule like this, where everything's happening on Saturday, you have so much time on Sunday. And I understand that you have to get the fuck out of your venues a lot of the time on Sunday, but look at Smash events like SmashCon, where you have, I think some singles pools start on Friday, and then they meter that out Friday, or some of round twos on Saturday, and then all of top 64 is on Sunday, and that means that at the very least, top 64 or Sunday is the most stressful part of your event, which is probably for the best. Whereas on Saturday, that means that you get to take time to go to the con, or like in SmashCon's case, you get to the con, you get to shop around, you get to experience the event instead of just having to channel yourself into this ultra competitive mindset for an entire day. That is very draining and doesn't let you experience the rest of the event. Top player, like low to mid-level players, aren't the only ones who want to experience the event and get friendlies and get money matches in. A lot of these top players also want to, I imagine, to experience the event and hang out with their friends. Like,
Right, exactly. Like everyone's got like different things to do,
mhm,
and you're not the bracket isn't the only aspect of a tournament.
yeah,
That's something very important to keep in mind.
mhm,
Another thing to keep in mind too, and I think this is a trend that I think a lot of people have talked about. Before COVID, a lot of majors used to start pools on Friday, and it was like you had like a
mhm,
mix of like Friday and Saturday pools.
yeah,
And then a lot of people had nothing to do from like Friday onwards, and that was like really rough, right? Because like
mhm,
having nothing to do Saturday, Sunday bracket wise is
yeah,
that sucks.
that sucks.
So
Yeah,
TOs though, people thought, okay, why don't we just and also like scheduling for work and school,
mhm,
etc. It's like, okay, let's have all the pools on Saturday and just have like side events on Friday. That way, like, cool, you could still,
yep,
that's one way to adapt. But the problem is you can't just move pools from one day to the next and then just like leave it as is. You kind of
mhm,
have to like adapt everything around that. So like
yeah,
I think what the optimal schedule would be is if you're doing all of the pools on Saturday,
mhm,
then you should move the second phases to
I
Sunday,
agree. Yeah,
where it's like I think in an ideal world, Saturday is just pools,
mhm,
like just round one pools, and then maybe like throwing a couple side
mhm,
events to like fill up the dead time, and then Sunday is like we're like okay, this is like the advanced part of bracket. This is like for the competitors who are like making it further.
mhm,
This is when you really try your heart out.
mhm,
And I think it helps alleviate. It helps. You can still get everything done, the meat of the tournament done, which is pools on Saturday,
mhm.
and then gives time to rest and prepare on Sunday. And I think it's more optimal that way. So
No,
obviously,
yeah.
not every event can really do that, and
Mhm.
obviously different events have different priorities for stream and such. But I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think we got into this. So one thing that just for you to clarify, even for me, is this is a new thing that has happened from at post COVID. The events prior to this did not have this kind of structure where all of singles is compressed into Saturday.
Yeah, no, I mean I think some events started to shift towards that pre-COVID. I have to look exactly which
Hmm.
ones, but like it was definitely not as prevalent as it is now. And it was like the topic came up pre-COVID where it's like, okay, we don't want to play our matches on Friday. We want to wait till Saturday.
Hmm.
And eventually shifted towards that. And that was nice. That was a very good change.
Sure.
Um, but again, like I said, like the rest of the structure wasn't, I think, didn't adapted of that. It didn't adapt alongside that, and so now you have the situation where like
Yeah.
you play too much on Saturday and not enough on Sunday.
No, that's definitely true, and I think a lot of the reason that people want to have, or that organizers and well, more specifically, production wants to have top 16 on Sunday, just top 16 on Sunday, not even top 64, is that they want to maximize the amount of your top 16 or 30. Well, really just 16, because I don't even think
Yeah.
they do this for top 32 or 64. Is they want to put
Mm.
almost every single one of those matches on mainstream, which
Yeah.
is cool and all, but also now you're looking at icing out players because you're
Yeah.
running an entire top 16 on one stream. So now these players are having to sit around for an hour and a half in between their matches. They're extraordinarily top level matches before they can play again, not necessarily knowing when they get to play next, right?
Yeah, and that's another topic. Every TO has like a different mentality when it comes to how they handle a stream.
Hmm.
Some TOs go, and some, I guess, production teams and organizations are very much content focused, right? So
Yep.
they're like, we want content, we want VODs, we want Twitch. This is our main source of revenue. This is where we live and breathe.
Yep.
And I get it,
Hmm.
totally understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's some TOs who are like, I just want to get the fuck out of here. I
Hmm.
just want to speed run through this. I want to get all the matches done. I don't care about content. The stream is just another setup to me. Let's
Hmm.
just get it over
Sure.
with, right? And that's also fine. But it's finding that balance
Hmm.
for majors, I think, is a struggle, and at the same time, it's very dependent on who's organizing the major. It's very dependent on who's involved. It depends on the budget. It depends on
Hmm.
sponsors, on deals. There's so many different things at hand. Like, obviously, BTS and VGBC are like very content driven, right? And we
Yep.
know that.
Yep.
And, some more like grassroots organizers are like, well, we like a stream, but we don't really care as much about the VODs. We just want exposure. So
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
just want to get through the bracket and showcase whatever's good. And,
Hmm.
we're fine with cutting some matches. We don't care about that. So
Sure.
it really, really depends. I'm personally more on the grassroots side of like I just want to get this shit done. And I want to like obviously I'll save like the top 8 or like top a certain top portion for stream, but
Mhm.
like I'm not as much of like a content person. I think I would rather run the bracket efficiently. And I think and this is another topic that we can go over another day. Is like
Mhm.
I would rather focus on the attendees that are at the event
Yes.
rather than the spectators watching from home.
God, I think you just like ripped the words out of my brain.
Yeah.
Actually, like that
Mhm.
I wholeheartedly agree with you that the I'm going to prioritize like, and this is a very different topic for a very different day, but I'm going to
Right.
prioritize the people that are at my event over anybody that is sitting at home and did not travel to my event.
Yeah.
Um,
Because like at the end of the day, like, obviously, you get tens of thousands of viewers. That's super sick, right?
mhm,
And I
absolutely.
respect that.
Hmm.
But those tens of thousands of viewers didn't spend hundreds of dollars traveling to your event. They didn't like take off work, they didn't take off school. They're just sitting at home. They could just, go to like another stream and just be like, whatever, I'm not
Hmm.
watching this anymore. And all of a sudden, boom, there goes your value, there goes your viewership.
Hmm.
But the person that's at your event, sitting on your spectator chair, watching your event, he's like he's dedicated. He has to be here.
Yep.
This is his weekend. And so I want to make sure that person has the best time of their life when
Absolutely.
they're at the event. And so like if I were to get like if I had like 1,000 attendees and 1,000 viewers and each of those 1,000 people gave me their feedback, I
Hmm.
would personally 100% take the attendees first and
Yep.
then the spectators.
Yep. 1000%. And I think that if you look at this, if you took the two different people and asked specifically the 1,000 attendees which schedule they would end up wanting, they would probably end up saying, yeah, I want 64 on Sunday,
Yeah.
so that way I can
Yep.
actually enjoy my damn Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's absolutely yeah.
No, I definitely I have a lot of thoughts that is also for a very different stream on who deserves to be on stream and like what stream is
Mhm.
used for.
Yep.
I think that I'm the weird guy that wants as many stream setups as possible, but not because of the exposure. I want it because the player VOD review is extraordinarily important for the players.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
But I don't think that having every single match be on stream is effective at all for the event.
Mhm.
Particularly at majors. And while I cannot personally say because I have not run a major. I like I don't. My opinion is very outside perspective, but this looking at alt and melee top 16 all on Sunday is it leaves a pit in my stomach. I'm not
Yeah.
a big fan of that. Yeah.
No, yeah, I get it. There's so many, and I know like Aiden Calvin
Hmm.
made like a small thread about it where he was saying, hot take, I think at
Ooh,
multi-game events it should only be top
top
6 on
six.
Sunday.
Oh my
And
god.
some people were saying like, oh, only top 4 because like XYZ.
Yep.
And it was starting to get into like how long does the top 8 take and
Yep.
what's like ad breaks and like, oh, it was a rabbit hole. And I'm just like, we are not getting into this right
No,
now.
that is
And
like, oh my
and
god.
I will say like, and again, no shade at all towards main stage,
Yep.
but 3 hours for an ultimate top 8, in what world
Yeah.
do you think that is even remotely
Hmm.
realistic? That is like a fully produced major top
Hmm.
8 is minimum 4
4
hours.
hours.
Minimum.
4 hours. Yeah.
Like,
No,
oh my
that's
god, yeah.
yeah. No, that's it's strict.
Yeah.
I will say I think before we start degrading into all sorts of different how majors should do things,
Yeah.
Tyree, we may want to go ahead and shift topics a little bit because we're what like 40-ish minutes
Something like
into
that,
this,
yeah.
so let's
53 minutes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah let's we'll go ahead and may want to shift topics if you don't mind.
Totally fine.
Yeah, so I think kind of the other point that I really wanted to make about the shift between pre to post COVID is something that let me look at it is something that is more on the TO side of things, and that's really just the oversaturation of
Right.
events. And I think we talk like I think even prior to COVID, oversaturation was kind of a problem, especially with the dawn of Ultimate, where
Yes.
organizers were like, "Damn, we want to run weeklies and we want to have one every single week in the same city." And I'm like, "Oh no, this is a problem." And this becomes even more of a problem at a major level when post COVID you
Mhm.
have all of your old head TOs that are coming out of the woodwork and we're like, damn, we really want to run events again because we've been, blue balled for a year and a half, and we want to get back into this. So you have Jabali coming out with CEO. Is December the normal timeline for CEO?
It is not. It was just because of COVID. Usually CEO is always the last weekend of June.
Yeah, so CEO is at an awkward time slot because Jabali wants to run an event. Super Smash Con had its mini Fall Fest in October. You had Riptide, Low Tide, both coming out in the same, like relatively the same time frame. We're seeing, alluded to this a little bit earlier, but and it's not just at a major level, but all of these events are getting compressed into this small time space. And this is affecting players trying to sign up for them, but also it's affecting the TOs who want to schedule their regional or small, like like C to B tier level events. I don't know if we're even using the tiers events, but I know for KIT this past October 30th, I think we looked at the number of events that happened on that October 30th weekend, and there was KIT, there was Port Priority, there was Cyphacon in Louisiana, there was also a Nebraska, I think, regional or something like that, some Midwest event, and then there was one other regional that I can't remember the name of. But you have all of these 100 to 300 man events on top of two majors happening the same weekend. Which is a huge problem because all your old head TOs want to run events, but now you also have all these new TOs, either Wi-Fi or fresh young TOs that want to try and break into getting into majors. And so we're seeing this flooding of events, and kind of what are your thoughts on that? I guess.
I mean, it kind of goes back to the earlier conversation we had about like the rush of like post COVID, right? And like everyone wants to host an event, and like everyone saw the demand for it. Like, I want my event to move. I want to get 3, 5, 7, 8. I want to get so many entrants, and just like boom, boom, boom. And a lot of older TOs are kind of coming back into the fray post COVID, and a lot of newer TOs also kind of grew and got inspired and were like, hey, I want to run events. I want to grow, like so many different factors, right?
Yep.
And so everyone's jumping in and everyone's kind of like kind of like conflicting with each other. And I it's a mess. It's such a mess. Like, I mean, I think Smash already had a scheduling problem to begin with. I think a lot of TOs don't do a good job of like communicating with each other, and also just, even if they do communicate, just being mindful of each other's dates and each other's like regions and everything.
Absolutely.
But like they were just like multiplied by like 100 now.
Yeah.
And like, I help manage the national Smash calendar for the community.
Yeah.
And the amount of times that I've had some poor regional TO contact me like, hey, I want to host an event on like this weekend. Is it available? And I'm like, no, because there's 2 majors, 3 regionals, and an invitational happening the same day. Pick another month. It's like, oh, can I pick can I pick the month before? Like, nope, every weekend is filled up until 5 months later. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, that fucking sucks, I guess. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. Like, sorry, man. Just, I guess you gotta cancel your event or just, cap it at like 128. Sorry, man.
Sorry, that sucks. And it's like all these larger events are sucking away the top players these top players are going to have to prioritize these big events for both their exposure and also the money that they're getting out of it. And I think go ahead.
And then people, like, a lot of TOs also started planning their events like really far in advance. Like, I think we had the entirety of 2022 filled out like in like September, like August or September or something. It was like really early on, like the whole year was planned out. And then like not everyone knows necessarily a year in advance what they're gonna do, and so they're coming in like, hey, can I do something in January? I'm like, nope. Well, can I do something in February? Nope. March? Hell no. And it just like keeps going and going,
Yeah, I was very thankful that I snagged a March spot. I'll take it. But anyways, so I think that this is also something that we kind of experienced this a little bit in the pre-COVID era with like a little bit of discussion with like 2GG was running. They were running a major almost every single month, and there was a lot of discussion about SoCal oversaturating the shit out of the national scene. And what do
Yes.
you do about that, right? It's like
Mhm.
what in and while that situation is a little bit different because it's an entire region with the backing of SoCal doing it,
Mhm.
now it's instead just an influx of so many different people all
Mhm.
trying to run events. And I think this is a problem, not just at a major level, but also at a local level. A lot
Mhm.
of, newer, there's a lot of, I say new gen, and I don't mean that it's slanderously in any way, shape, or form, but there's a lot of new
Yes.
gen organizers that are coming out and being like, hey, I want to run these weeklies or I want to run these monthlies. And
Mhm.
some of the old gen guys are still trying to get back into it. And now you have your attendance split amongst all these different weeklies and in smaller scenes that just can't sustain it. Like
Yeah.
honestly, in Alabama, in Tennessee, I don't know if Kentucky's been facing it at all, but I imagine it's a problem in a ton of places.
Mhm. Yeah, I know it's a lot of like local scenes have kind of like blown up or have shifted or have changed and whatnot. And some scenes are very good about communicating with each other and kind of collaborating and creating like a healthy environment. And some other scenes, are a little bit more lax with that sort of thing. And
Yep.
I've seen some scenes that have like a week like they have like a weekly every single day of the week,
Mm-hmm.
which some think that's like amazing, some think that's like way too much,
Mm-hmm.
and then it
Yep.
gets into a territory of like I've seen some scenes have like 2 or 3 weeklies a day.
Yep.
And obviously it depends on like the size and like scale and whatnot,
Yep.
but it's just like where do you find that balance? Like how do you like determine what
Mm-hmm.
the right amount of weeklies is, the right amount of regionals? Like,
Yep.
you know, I don't have the right to tell TOs, oh, you can only
Mm-hmm.
organize X amount of a year. That's
Yep.
not that's no one's
Nope.
responsibility.
Yeah.
But if you have like 10 TOs who are all trying to do the same thing at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it's like you have to be reasonable. Like, all right, look, I don't want to do my event if 5 other people also want to do an event. I'm gonna wait
Yep.
in my corner and wait until there's like a good time slot and then do my event. You're
Mm-hmm.
just like you have to like work together on this thing. It's not a one man job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something to be said not just in collaboration of networking and figuring out dates with each other, but there's also I think something to be said for everyone coming together for individual like multiple different TOs coming in together for one individual event. I
Yes.
know that I think that Middle Tennessee's actually been struggling with this a little bit. Is that they've got 3 weeklies in one region in a population that can't really support it. So and someone else is wanting to try and move in and start a weekly. So
Yes.
would it not be better for that person to try and find a role in one of the other weeklies to help out, either from a production or another standpoint, or do they just try and run their own weekly and then let them cannibalize themselves? Like, is there something to be said for the best TO prevails for
Mhm.
some of these weeklies or some of these majors or regionals? Even is just like I'm gonna
Yeah.
run the bigger and better event, and it sucks to suck. But
Yeah.
then you spiral into the places with the money like SoCal, Tri-State that actually have the money to sustain that
Yeah.
ecosystem, which is just going to snuff out other players, and that's why people had such a huge issue with 2GG, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like sometimes it's also just a question of preference. Like
Mm-hmm.
some communities just prefer one TO or one group over another
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons.
Yep.
And it's like it's very hard to shift. I don't want to say shift, but more so gain the trust of the community to where you become one of the main TOs, organizers,
Mm-hmm.
event, whatever.
Yep.
Um, and how do you balance it? Because I mean, at the end of the day, like even if TOs are like get along with each other and like communicate and such, it's still competition. It's
Mm-hmm.
still an industry. It's still like you're trying to be the best event out there,
Mm-hmm.
and you sometimes you just have to accept that like your event just might not be as good as the other, or like
Yep.
that people are constantly trying to one up each other, not in a negative way, but just in a sort of like trying to become like the best they can be. So they always
Mm-hmm.
have to like outdo themselves. Like, okay, well, this event proposed like this, they proposed this side event and it worked well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can offer like this amenity and it'll go well for me. And
Yep.
every event has its charm. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to be unique and stand out in the community right now.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. As someone who is a low to mid level TO that's trying to kind of work his way up, it's harder to break into the major scene because, like, well, also I'm in a location that can't really support a major, so I have to
Right.
try and be on staff for these bigger events and to try and
Mhm.
climb up that way. But yeah, there's a lot going on. You were talking about some regions running 2 to 3 weeklies in a day. I
Right.
DFW comes to mind, Dallas Fort Worth area.
Yeah, that's what I thought of.
That's what
Yeah.
you were thinking. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
They have an entire graphic dedicated to their weekly schedule. That's
It's
fucking
insane.
absurd. What the
And,
hell?
and like I think some friends have shown me like what it looked like pre-COVID. I'm just like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
Like, how do you like? And obviously, DFW is like it's Dallas Fort Worth.
Yep.
It is like a geographically big region,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you don't just like walk from one weekly to the other. You kind of have to like drive around and
Yeah.
everything. And so like I get it that like each part of DFW wants their own weekly and their own scene.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're looking from the outside looking in, it's like, holy shit, that's a lot.
That's a lot. And like and some are geographically like have to do that to sustain it, cuz like Dallas Fort Worth isn't just Dallas and Fort Worth, it's also all of the
Right.
suburbs that are around it. So there are
Right.
some people that are on the north end of Dallas probably. Actually, I saw this most notably in Denver when I lived out there for a brief amount of time. Denver had people from the northeast end or northwest end that couldn't go to weeklies on the south end of Denver because it was an hour and a half drive, which is insane for
Yep.
like a lot of people don't want to make that drive for a weekly. So you end up having all these weeklies pop up, and they're all in completely geographically different locations. And sometimes you have the population to sustain them. Some are going to get 20, some are going to get 30, some get 70. And sometimes it works out for those cities. I think that Denver did a relatively good job of it. I'm sure Dallas Fort Worth has the population to have 100 people at each of these weeklies. But there are some
Right.
scenes that can't sustain that. And so what do you do at that point, right?
Exactly. It's insane. I don't know. Every scene's different. Every TO works differently, and I just hope every region finds finds their own balance really, and make sure everyone's happy and not oversaturated. So
No, 100%. 100%. All right, do we want to move on to scheduling just a little bit, or
yeah. So there's one last point, which is not necessarily. I guess it's tied into scheduling. It's talking about like bracket formats, and this is
Okay.
a little bit of like a nerdier topic, I guess you can say.
All right.
This is more of like those players might not be as I guess well versed, but I can kind of explain it better. So
Do you
when
need me
you're
to put up a graph? Oh, I see you've. Oh, yeah, you've been linking stuff in the chat, and I have not noticed it at all. Whoopsies.
it's all good. So looking at if you look at all the majors, right? And you look at the way the progression system works, it's been really interesting for me to kind of look at how events have been formatted in terms of how many players per pool, how many players make it out of set pools, how many pools you run at once, etc., etc. And what majors have tend to be going for lately is they've been going for having more pools having more smaller pools rather than less bigger pools, if that makes sense.
Yes, no, that makes sense. Yep.
And so, and then from there, they have different progressions instead of like some do like top 4 out of pools, some do top 3 out of pools, and then when you get into phase 2, then it gets into like top 8 out of pools, top 3, top 4. Like it's all over the place, and you end up running. And on the surface, you're like, whatever, it seems pretty trivial. But then when you look at the semantics of it, it actually starts to really matter, because then you get into situations of like double jeopardy, where it's like you have to face the same person twice to make it out. You get into situations where it affects the way the tournament is run. It runs into situations where like, how stacked are the pools? It runs into situations where like you get this like really awkward. The top cut is like top like 192. It's kind of weird. Like you'll have like pools into like a 192 into like a top 48 into a top 16. Like there's no like set standard, and it's really awkward. And what I personally doesn't bother me, boy. I'm trying to find a nice way to word it, as I get very passionate about this.
Yeah, no, of course.
One concern I have is I think it could be very easily simplified in the sense that structuring pools, to me, it's a game of math. It's like you have X entrants, you divide it in Y pools for Z people per pool, and you can very easily make like a flow that just makes sense. And I understand the appeal of making smaller pools because they go faster,
Mm-hmm.
but creating smaller pools means you're adding more pools, you have a longer pool time, or you add more phases to the bracket, which ends up just
Yep.
counteracting what you were trying to do in the
Do in
first
the first
place,
place.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like what's your like depends what's your preference depends on so many things, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the foundation of my topic. I don't know if you got any thoughts on that, any like particular opinions.
Yeah, so that is interesting. I will say in like a pseudo defense of like I have two things that kind of popped up. It's like a pseudo defense against like this smaller pools or smaller attendance pools for in favor of more pools is that I do think there is something to be said for being a bit more experimental with how you run brackets. I think that
I
it
agree.
is
Yep.
worth TOs trying out new things because I don't think that by any stretch our art is perfected in any way.
Yes.
I think there's a lot to be said for trying and pushing and developing, for lack of a better term, the bracketology meta. And that
Yes.
sounds very like really stupid, like on the outside looking in, but like I think there's definitely some boundaries that can be pushed there. And then also in defense of smaller pools, I think that there is something to be said for some of your less experienced pool captains who
That's true.
don't
Yep.
know how to, or maybe have minimal experience, especially coming out of COVID. If they don't have as much experience running pools, then a 16-man pool is a hell of a lot more manageable than a 24 or a 32-man pool.
Yes. Agreed.
And that does help some of these low level bracket runners. However, I'm gonna devil's advocate the devil's advocate.
Right.
These when you have so many more pools, that means you need so many more volunteers to run them
Yeah.
simultaneously, especially, which is how you start getting bracket runners that are less experienced and ones that can not manage these 16-man pools.
Right.
So I think it's good that coming out of COVID, we can afford to be a little experimental with how we run things, but we still have to be having the player's experience in mind and looking at the
Yes.
bigger picture, especially.
Right. For sure. Like I've seen like there's some seeing majors still do like top three out of pools and just seeing like constant tweets about like double jeopardy
Yep.
and like I lost the same person. Like it just breaks my heart, and
Yeah.
I'm just like that's like I know I it's something that that's been a plague, like a problem for a long time, and
Hmm.
I just wish it wasn't the case anymore. I mean, obviously double jeopardy can still happen in a top four
Four
out of
make it
pool
out. Yeah.
situation. And, but it's just I don't know. It's interesting to see the different formats, and like you said, I think there is merit to experimenting. And some people go as far as like completely change the bracket structure. They'll do like round robin pools. They'll do Swiss, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but I don't know. It's interesting. I'm personally I'm of the belief for specifically bracket structures that it can be not necessarily perfected,
Hmm.
but more so streamlined, and that I
Sure.
think there is a way to kind of have a better reference rather than have to start from scratch every time.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the bracket structures also depend on how many volunteers you have. It depends on how many subs you have. It depends on how big your venue is.
Hmm.
So you can't always pull everything off. And then also, I know one argument that was brought up for Riptide was like, well, it's the first super major back from COVID. We want to try to alleviate the crowding issue. Let's have smaller pools. That way, you
Right.
don't have like 32 people around a table. And
Hmm.
I get that. It's definitely a valid point.
Sure.
Um, but then you can bring up the argument of like, well, those same 32 people are there. They're just split up across tables. So
Yeah.
it's like, are you really cutting it down? And then I know
Yeah.
like round two pools were also played like behind the
Hmm.
stream area. So like there's a lot of different arguments that can be made and
Hmm.
different things that can be tried. So it's I don't know. It's it really depends. And I don't know. I think it can be streamlined. I'm not saying it can be like has to be like a set system forever and ever, but like
Hmm.
I don't think yeah, I don't know.
I also want to point out that specifically in instances of Riptide where you want to where you're having maximum 16 people per pool, out of COVID, circling back to the point I made earlier about the sheer amount of disqualifications. the sheer amount of disqualifications you're having is causing these small pools to have even less people. So when I was running melee pools at Riptide, this was an 11-man pool that some of these, literally half of your bracket would go missing. 6 no-shows would happen, 5 people in a pool, which is completely impractical and absurd, especially when some do have the full 11. And so I think that, unfortunately, those two reasonable ideas, unfortunately, mixed together to make a very bad situation for some of those pools. And I think that that's still going to be an issue that we run into further on with small, low attendee pools at events, because I don't think the DQ issue is going away anytime soon. It's definitely not, as a matter of fact. If you look at the main stage numbers, what was the main stage count? It was 16% DQs in Melee, 15% in Smush. Like, it's still it's still an immense amount. So I don't think that small count pools are really the answer as of right now. So there was something else I wanted to point out, but if you have something, go.
I mean, I could go on, and like I obviously I'm not trying to like say that like one method is better than the others. I'm not trying to say that like everyone has to necessarily follow the same structure, because obviously every TO is different, every org is different. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's one of those things that's not talked about as much as it should be, and I think it's something that can make a lot of people's lives easier. It's just, we're just still stuck in this. I think we're in this trend of like everyone's trying to be unique, but they're changing certain aspects that don't need to be changed. Change is good, but that change has to be meaningful. Change for the sake of change isn't worth it.
I think. Sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, that was my.
I think that, and it's also, you have to make these changes with the player experience in mind, like you were saying earlier with Double Jeopardy. And so, just for a little context for the chat, Double Jeopardy, you get double eliminated, or honestly, I think you can even quantify Double Jeopardy as having to play the same person twice in a pool. Now, and I say this most explicitly, a friend of mine from Cincinnati at Riptide, his name is Cadence, or his tag is Cadence. He's a Pikachu. He's PR'd in Cincy. But he beat Entropy in his pool. Moved on to play against Kofi on stream, lost, and then in his losers set to get out, had to play against Entropy again, and then Entropy beat him that time to make it out, which is extremely damaged. Like, oh damn, I 2-0'd this person at first and then I got 0-2'd. Like, that is so damaging to your player experience, right?
Absolutely.
So for context to chat and viewers watching, when you do, let's say you only have a top 2 make it out. So if you look at a pool, the first and second seed of your pool would have to play to make it out, right? And then your second seed the second seed already plays the third seed of a pool in winners. So, but in losers, and you can see this with any double elimination bracket, your second and third seed in any double elimination bracket have to play again. So you're, with top 2 to make it out, you are guaranteed a Double Jeopardy projected for your third seed, which is awful. That's fucking terrible and disrespectful, frankly. So if you do top 3, in theory, you resolve this, but if literally any upset happens along the line, let's say a major accidentally underseeds a PR player, or they just don't have the ability, like, for, any very reasonable reason that they don't know where to put this PR player, and they make the fucking run of their life in losers, they get double elimed by the second seed of the pool. And that fucking sucks. Which is why I like, personally, and I think a lot of people are advocates for top 4 make it out, because if you get knocked out by somebody in losers, you go on the other, or knocked out 2 losers from someone in winners, you go on the other side of their losers bracket, such that if they lose, they are on the complete opposite sides of bracket. And so yeah, I top 4 to make it out, I think is should be a fucking major standard.
Yeah.
I don't have the ability to say that unfortunately yet, but
Yeah,
I think
I believe I'm same camp. I think top four should be absolutely the way.
yeah,
And it's something like top eight is like I think a little bit excessive for pools. Top
sure,
four I think is more reasonable.
sure.
So I actually sent you my pool. So I competed, back in Smash 4. I sent you my Evo 2018 pool,
Oh Jesus
and
Christ! Oh
it is
no!
very relevant to our conversation.
Hold
You can just
on.
bring up this. Yeah.
Let me. Oh, okay. Hold up. I have to. Unfortunately, to bring it up in OBS, I have to save it as an image and then pull it up as a source, and that's just the easiest way to do it with my layout. But I
Yeah, yeah.
will.
It is very
All
relevant
right.
to our conversation, and you'll see
Here we
why.
are. Let's unhide this entrant. All right. Let's take a look at this chat. Yeah. All right. We've got it. We got it centered now. All right. So
Awesome.
so what's your path look like? Is this
So,
specifically yours?
so look at my path. I
Okay.
start off. I play double A battery,
Okay.
then Xenix, lose to Scourge Mom,
Mm-hmm.
and then in losers I play double A battery and then Xenix and make it out of pools.
Jesus fucking Christ. I would be
I
so.
played I played the same three like outside the person I lost to. I played the same two people in my bracket.
Oh my
I went
god.
4-2, beating two people.
Holy shit. You better have made the fucking losers run of your life.
I mean, I forget how I play. I think I got like 97th or something at that event,
Oh.
but it was just like
That's
I
so
think
sad.
from that point on, I was just like, I never ever want to hear about top three out of
No.
pools ever again.
Nah. The
Like,
the blood on your hands after that, you understand that it's not sustainable. Jesus
it
Christ.
was like it's not because like sometimes people will bring up like, oh, the TOs will make all these changes, but like do they know like the TOs might say, oh, double jeopardy isn't that big a deal. They've never experienced it. I'm like, bro, I,
I've watched it
like
happen. I've watched friends fucking sit in a corner and brood listening to goddamn Kanye West or some shit for half an hour because of Double
right.
Jeopardy. It's awful. Don't do that.
It's so bad. It's just like I hate double jeopardy with all my
Yeah.
passion. And then anytime someone says, "Oh, top three out of pools is fine," I just show them that pool, and I'm
That
like, "Tell
pool.
me that was
Tell me
okay.
tell me that was
Go
fine.
ahead, tell me." Like it might have been funny, like in the moment, like, "Oh my god, I get to play again, haha." But then later on, it was like, "Okay, what the fuck? Like
That's
I'm not happy
absurd.
with this."
No.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Um.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
I don't, if there's
Go ahead. Go ahead.
if I was gonna say if there's like is there anything else that's like on your mind that like you want to like bring up or
I think those are the really the big points because just like specifically in the realm of like pre to post COVID, like what's changed in events. I think we've hit a lot of the high points and a lot of the challenges that have happened, not just to organizers but also to attendees and production as well.
Mhm.
No, I think we've hit the highlights. If you've got any final thoughts, please feel free to share.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Smash majors it's an ever evolving environment, right? And like
Yeah.
every TO's trying to kind of put in their own spin onto it, and everyone's trying to innovate, and everyone's trying to like revolutionize, and everyone wants to be the standard of majors,
Yeah.
and that's all well and nice and done. But I think there's so much more nuance to it that it's really hard, and I don't want to say impossible, but it's very very hard to streamline this sort of process. And I think it'll be a very long time before we see any sort of standard of how events should be organized and scheduled and ran.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be real. If we can't even get a unified rule set for Ultimate, we're definitely not going to get a unified bracket structure or
God,
schedule for Ultimate.
why did you say the R word? Oh, motherfucker, dude. I hate that word so much. I
Oh my
I
god.
don't we don't need to talk about rule sets. I have some very interesting thoughts on how those should go, but I'll digress that for a very different conversation.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll say kind of just in wrap up, kind
Mhm.
of just looking at the whole talk was, yeah, like attendees that are listening to this, all however many of you that watch this, just be mindful of how you're signing up for events. Like, try, yes, it's scary that these event caps happen. It's scary that that people are rushing, and like, yes, thank God offline's back. I'm so
Yeah,
glad to be running
hands down.
events offline again, and I'm sure you're like super happy to be attending offline events again. But
Absolutely.
please still be mindful in the sign up process to know, hey, do I have a bunch of homies going? Are we going to actually commit to this? Are we going to go? Are we going to rent a car, hotel, so on and so forth? Just be mindful of like how you're signing up for events and how we treat majors, right? Because it's refunds are one refund. Sure, it's not that big of a problem, but 300 of them is a huge strain. Strain on TOs. I'm making that shout out for Jabali. God help him.
Right. Oh yeah. No. Godspeed to what he had to go through. Like, holy crap.
Holy shit, it sounds so bad. Um, but yeah, and then as far as majors go, yeah, obviously a lot of work still to do, and hopefully we'll get there together. That's the real goal. Is I'm gonna encourage cooperation between us, networking,
Mhm.
hopefully talks like these to really hash these out amongst people that can make it happen, and just keep in mind why we do it. We're doing it
Yeah.
for the attendees, for the player experience. So
Absolutely. 100% agreed.
yeah,
So.
that's pretty much it. You got any socials, any events that you want to plug real quick before we sign off?
So, I mean, let's see. So so I'll be running Heartbeat this weekend, which is a Texas regional. I
Awesome,
think we're at like 120 or so attendees, which is pretty cool.
awesome.
And then after that, the next two majors you'll see me at are CEO
Hmm.
and the Smash World Tour Championships in
Ooh,
December.
hell yeah.
So that's gonna be super fun. And then after that, bunch more to come. But that's what I've got coming up immediately. If you guys want to follow me, my Twitter is at CAGT3000. And if you can also check out my website, which is at cagt.gg, where you can find all the information on like events I've worked, people I've worked with, connections, guides, everything about me is on my website, cagt.gg. So
Oh yeah. So on yeah, and I've got some very exciting things coming up with CEO. I'll see you there. Definitely. Really looking forward to that. As far as I go, I'm gonna be so I'm very fortunate in the sense that all of my social everything I have the unique username for. So my Twitter,
nice.
my Twitch, and my YouTube are all just Rexcalibur, WREXCALIBUR. So please check me out. I'd really appreciate um, the follows and the subscriptions or whatever else you may have. I really appreciate all the support because I really want to do more of this. I want to talk about more about what the TOs are doing, kind of both the difficulty, the nuance, a lot of the things that players, that production, that commentators don't see. I want to be able to be transparent with you guys about that and really push that kind of content and discussion. Um, so yeah, really appreciate everybody for watching, and yeah, have a great one, guys. Bye bye.
Take care.
Let me end stream. Fuck, where's the